All right, we are locking in. Backtesting session number 2. I'm gonna start right where we left off on the last one, on the last day of April 2023. Quick recap, since I went over the high time frame pretty in depth on the last one. Around the bear market low of Bitcoin, we know that just because we know that, right? And it makes sense. We've been downtrending for a very long period of time. We got the macro PO3 expanded to the upside and finally broke that high time frame structure to bullish after, breaking it bearish, downtrending for an extended period of time. We are approaching, pretty significant supply, and we are starting to see some sort of a topping formation coming in. Let me remove this just to clean things up. Starting to see some sort of a topping formation in this region where, we had the exhaustion coming up. We got a little bit of a pop out with the distribution before getting, a pretty aggressive move back down. Local accumulation that swept some liquidity. So, kind of also some ranging price behavior here. So we could also look at this entire thing as a range where, this could make for some nice distribution plays because all this exhaustion prior. Where, this one's a little bit more risky because of the aggressive move coming out. But, now that we have this larger size, you can look at all this exhaustion relative to that. And, it can make some sense to get a pullback here into one of those lower POIs. Locally, we had just seen, that accumulation, that push price up, sweeping all that buy-side liquidity, tapping into your extreme supply after breaking structure bearish. And this is technically your level 2 structure following that market structure that was broken from the low up. So here, you had you had that breaker structure there, continuing with the lower highs, or the higher lows for the higher highs, and then locally right here we got that as well. So technically, this is the confirmation for price to continue with that uptrend. So we got to keep that in mind, but at the same time, we also are seeing some exhaustion coming into this region, so we could get a deeper correction. Also judging off of, just market structure pulls, if we pull a range and use our demand fids, which is, regions where price can put in a higher low, likely in an uptrend, we have the 0.5 way below the current price and these lower levels kind of aligning with these POIs. So ideally to bet on a lower high for the lower low, higher low for the, then we want to see one of these lower POIs get tapped into, which can easily look like a distribution here that pushes price down into those. Or we can, judging off of this, just get the trend continuation. So we're going to see what we get there. If we continue trending down, accumulations in these regions can be very high probability. If we come up, start sweeping the side, distributions up there can be nice. Everything in between, we will just trade as if it's in a range. Locally, we had this compression here, so we got a pretty aggressive buy to sell to buy, and then we started ranging here, and within this range we then compressed, swept buy side liquidity to the high, and then rejected back down. So it does look a bit more bearish here locally, breaking that structure locally, from this low up. Just within the buy to sell, but truly, you didn't even sweep this high, so you're really just within a range. So you got breaker structure bearish, breaker structure bullish, and then just kind of some V-shapery price action. So really just looking at this as ranging price behavior here, locally getting that aggressive move down, breaking some local structure after having that compression first move, fake move. So some distributive price behavior, nothing too great to trade. Checking out ETH. ETH just swept that swing point up here to the high. Got some acceptance back in. Give me one moment. My dog was banging on the door. I had to let him in real quick. All right. Back to it. We are looking at ETH. ETH swept that high right there. We got a high probability demand POI below us. And currently we are in a distribution that has semi-counter context because we've been downtrending for a long period of time, and we are essentially would be shorting the bottom of this pivot, but it is a distribution range, so that's what we can look at here. Zooming in on the local price action, this was the accumulation I traded previously, got the push up, and ended up just being a buy to sell to, partial buy that just ended up forming this range. And, within this range, same thing as Bitcoin, we had the compression, first move, fake move. So really nice expectation or order flow identification by us on the last video, but we just didn't manage to catch any entries because there's a lot of these 2-tap models. And something I've been definitely noticing a lot of recently is these compressions that turn into 2-tap models, and that when you have this super clean compression like this, potentially you could make an entry model around trading a second tap. So currently I don't have that and haven't gathered any enough data on it, but yeah, it's definitely something I've been thinking about, something I've been noticing happen a lot. So yeah, we're getting a fairly aggressive expansion to the downside here, creating some supply locally. And yeah, you kind of just got liquidity sweeps on either end. So you got this partial liquidity sweep here and the liquidity sweep to the low with some local bearish price action. So we're just going to be, monitoring the local POIs after this aggressive expansion and seeing what price has for us. Watching, also POIs here on the left. It's just a lot of liquidity POIs above us, supply there, yeah. So just going to be monitoring how price moves into those POIs. Here we had XRP. Been downtrending for an extended period of time after sweeping that high. Very similar situation to ETH, kind of getting that semi-counter distribution location-wise. Distributive price behavior location-wise. Zooming in here, we are seeing some exhaustion down here to the lows. We were monitoring for an accumulation here, but price ended up just reversing up, leaving buy side liquidity, swept the high, and now we're reversing. Extend these PYs a bit to the right. So yeah, locally, this could come down. If we do get a sweep of this low, this is a very nice location to accumulate. If we end up front running that low, we could look for accumulations front running that low as well. Judging off your market structure where you SFP, you come up, you SFP this structure, you get the pullback, and then you can trade the level 2 within that region. But ideally, you just sweep this low, or you come into one of these lower POIs. But yeah, you have been downtrending for an extended period of time, so we are in a semi-pro environment for accumulations upon sweeping that low. And locally here, if you can come up and sweep this, that can be nice for a distribution as well. SFPing your main market structure from the top down. Doge, we came off of 2 L's last time on Doge, where we took this model right here, ended up de-risking that one, so that was a risk-free trade, and then we took this model right here, this model 1, that ended up just giving a fake break before going higher. Both of the models were in a neutral Bitcoin environment where Bitcoin was just simply compressing, and that compression of getting the first move up as the fake move. So it was in that neutral environment where you really got to be, when you're in a neutral environment on Bitcoin, you really got to be extra careful for fake breaks and confirmations. That's something I definitely noted down after that loss right there on Doge. And this failed model here as well, where this one was lesser probability already due to the significant POI mitigation, and then decent move away, but not a whole lot of exhaustion coming into that. As you can see, it was just a fairly aggressive move before the range creation. So the environment on this one wasn't ideal, and then the environment on Bitcoin on this one made you vulnerable for fake breaks. Also front running the key supply, and then when you came into the key supply, it was a bit harder to trade, but you did technically have a model here, like I have outlined, where you kind of have to follow up these deviations, where you deviate it, extend your range, and then you look at this as your extreme liquidity sweep with that breaker structure inside right there. Wasn't something I was super interested in trading, although the location was nice and the overall market was setting up really nice on this move up. So, it could have been a potential entry. Wasn't something that I decided to take, though, just because the overall development wasn't super textbook here. And, you kind of had some demand zones, demand creations on that move up prior to the pretty nice aggressive breaker structure, and it was right before that weekly open, which occurred down here, making you vulnerable for a spikes up. But the time you're most vulnerable to getting stopped out on the weekly open is if you're entering a trade during these after hours prior to the weekly open, is what I've noticed. And that New York session ended up actually working, so that's interesting to note. And that was in combination with Bitcoin and ETH coming up and sweeping their highs, which we could already view as a first move fake move due to the compression, creating when you get that first move fake move expectation right here, where you have the compression, first move up, the expectation is that it's a fake move, that creates a semi-pro environment on Bitcoin. So you can also be a little bit more lenient with the model when you have semi-pro environments on Bitcoin and a semi-pro environment on Doge, given the exhaustion coming into it and the many deviations prior to that tap too. You can be a bit more lenient with the model. But yeah, overall, this wasn't the picture perfect model that I would have really liked to develop, unfortunately. Because if you just draw the range starting points, a lot of that price behavior is above that. It's kind of just like you leave in that range, which doesn't look the cleanest. But as you can see, it played out very nicely. So definitely some price behavior to note down and learn from. Just didn't manage catching an entry on it. And then finally we had Solana here. Solana also got a 2-tap model. It's coming into a super high probability POI, so that's unfortunate to get a 2-tap there. Cleaning up this chart overall in the higher time frame on Solana. You got this breaker structure bullish, but it ended up just being a break into supply, and now we have a range creation where you got some exhaustion coming into this range creation, where you have a compression, and then you get that compression first move fake move coming up with the distribution. So overall, Solana out of these charts is looking a bit more bearish. Most of them are looking pretty bearish, with ETH and XRP having deviations to their main range high. Solana having that exhaustion with the first move fake move expectation there. Although we did bounce from the crucial POI, so if this is intended to fail that, this would be the area to bounce from and put in a higher low for the higher high. But for now, we're expecting that this move to be a fake move, and then a continuation down to that range low from there. Locally here, yeah, we really nailed the expectations on these pairs. Just didn't manage to get the entry within this local environment due to many of these giving 2-tap models, apart from Doge having that sketchier model. So yeah, now we're coming down. We did get a lot of exhaustion coming into this POI, so something I would be interested in trading would be an accumulation prior, upon sweeping this low, although I would like it to be a bit lower time frame just due to that higher time frame expectation. Maybe if you can, create some exhaustion and some buy side liquidity coming into that low, and then you get, your local, you get your local model then right here. Something like this could be nice. Little local model there, just given all this exhaustion. Ideally though, actually, you get that move up, sweeping this high for a distribution. These are going to be your best plays, the distributions here, where you either get one sweeping the high with that distribution, or you come into the created supply zone right here, more likely, and you get a distribution here. And I'll just remove all of this, where we can just view this as a bearish break. Liquidity sweep at the high, bearish break right there. Some nice POI creations here that we can highlight. And then this right here is also some supply. Just gonna, what if price comes into it, we can check it out, we can highlight it, but for now we'll just overall just leave it at this. kind of how I'm feeling like illustrating this POI right here. And if we start coming up deeper, you have those zones inside of there that you could see a rejection from. Gotta make it clean. So yeah, we're just getting that bearish expansion to the downside. So I'm gonna watch Bitcoin here. And see what it has in store for us. So Bitcoin as well has these supply creations. Yeah, most of these pairs are looking more bearish, if anything. Doge, we do technically have this accumulation potential, but we're already pushing it based on the, we see that low time frame distribution that formed right there, tapping into that nice supply zone. Yeah, we're already kind of pushing the range duration there, and this isn't the greatest range starting points, so maybe we can see a sweep of the low. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention Doge high time frame. We had this local exhaustion coming in, we had a liquidity switch to the high, and then we got a range creation. So I'm just kind of trading as a range where we have all this liquidity below us here. So maybe we get some more exhaustion and then coming down here, sweeping that low, and that can be then our range after, you know, we got this super aggressive move down. It's not the nicest from a range starting point perspective. Okay, back to Bitcoin. Continuing down here. Interesting. Starting to see your first signs of exhaustion on these pairs. Yeah, you could look at it as a distribution, but I really don't like that range starting point. Yeah, I mean, some local accumulative price behavior after that aggressive move, but I'd really like to see a bit more exhaustion. XRP does look a bit better than these other pairs. Where this could definitely be the range that you're inside of. Pretty decent duration there. Although you didn't tap into that liquidity for the Model 2, which I would have missed. That is the issue with trading so many pairs at once. You can definitely miss some models. So yeah, I mean, overall it's starting to get a bit overextended if you do come for it now. You have some more time, but for the most part, I really like to see this low get swept. Yeah, most of these pairs are in the same range with the aggressive starting points, and they're getting a bit overextended. Yeah. Really no entry there. Neither on ETH. Let's back this up. Went too fast. It's like the RR doesn't really seem to be there. RR is not really there on this Doge play. Tap displacement isn't ideal, and the duration's good though, the overall duration. Occasion's not horrible. Not really in any POI here on the left though. But you can see this overall return to zone there. What does Solana have? Not a real entry on Solana. I'd prefer to look at this range. This is the range I'd prefer to get on most of these pairs, where you have that exhaustion prior to a nice range creation. And if you just come up, we can just start looking at these POIs here for distributions where you're already starting to get some exhaustion to the upside there if you do continue up. Let me look at Doge here though and see if we can get a pullback. Like this technically is your extreme liquidity. It's just too high in the range to put a stop loss, especially with the price behavior there. Volume on these candles is horrendous. ETH already completed its model. If we want to, now that it's completed, you can kind of look at this as a model 1 / PO3 kind of vibe right there that completed. Liquidity sweep to the upside. So it's making the shorts look more attractive. I'm gonna keep watching Doge here. Solana creeping higher there. Doge still within this accumulative range. XRP failing that initial potential third tap. Don't think it ever kind of got confirmed way up here. Not ideal. And then is that. Trying to see if there's a better POI a bit deeper down here, that price we're seeking. Yeah, you have this. That's pretty nice. Hey, XRP would look a lot nicer to come and sweep the main low again, but I'll watch the demand for now. Yeah, no, I'm not liking that. I'll leave it on the chart, but I'm not liking that. I want to see it come and sweep the main low. And this is where Solana's forming a 5-hour distribution on a Tuesday. Just view the overall price action here. Yeah, a bit low time frame and not a clear third tap POI, so this would be something I want to see go over into a higher time frame range. Doge having a fairly slow move up. Never really had an RR worthy potential or RR worthy entry. And now Bitcoin is tapped into its supply POI with some sort of a distribution. Again, super low time frame. What the hell? Don't tell me I gotta restart this. Man, don't die on me while I'm recording. I'm gonna give this one moment and then I'll restart it. Damn. Trading for you need to work out the kinks. I guess don't try and change time frame while you have the thing going. Yeah, this thing is broken. Unfortunate thing is that, you know, since I'm in replay mode, now I gotta go back to that location, but I don't have that exact location saved. I don't want to spoil what happens next for myself. So yeah, don't look at that. Let's see how well did I do. Oh my god. That's damn near perfect. It's been about a day 20. Okay. Okay. Oh well, actually, I did go a little bit too far. So we formed a 6-hour distribution model right here on Bitcoin. What do we have on the other pairs? ETH pushing up into the supply zone. To the most extreme region of the supply zone. Doge still failing to complete its model, showing some exhaustion coming up. Yeah, so it's gonna continue watching what Bitcoin decides to do here. Ideally, we can complete this and then come back up and sweep that high once again. See what's going on here. Same thing on Solana, completed. Yeah, I'm really not interested in trading these low time frames. Just on a random day, nothing like super significant speaking to me there. That's almost perfect. Was there even structure there? Might have been. Doesn't necessarily matter. Usually isn't. Something down here. Yeah, I'm not super interested in trading that. Doesn't meet any of the exceptions to the minimum range duration, so that is all good. Just nice to see the concepts working even on a lower time frame. Yeah, ideally watching for that move up, as it seems like we're getting just a lower high. So I'm making a lower low. You can see these accumulations didn't actually end up having any meaning. It didn't even hit the target really. So maybe what we can see is this range turning into an accumulation, but it needs to get acceptance up right now, or else it's looking to drag to the downside. And we'll just have to look for something new. Same with Doge, never completed. This is actually looking pretty decent from a new accumulation perspective right here. Yeah, I'm liking this on Doge here the most. ETH here. Kind of like tap that PY. ETH was the only thing that actually got some, meaningful follow through, and wasn't really anything tradable on ETH here for sure. I could see this if you got this sweep right here. If you got this sweep, maybe if this move could have continued on the sweep, or even this one right here continued down. Ideally, it would have been this move right here. This move could have came down and gotten that sweep. That could be nice for sure. And then you'd be deviating this tap. Yeah, that would have been clean. But either way, nothing there. Could be doing something locally, but there's better pairs to watch for that. Nice supply mitigation, distribution, push down locally. Definitely showing some ranging behavior within this range. Coming into some local support, which can be nice for that accumulation we were watching on Doge. Maybe you get, another move like this, and, it just really starts maybe even sweeping this low. In combination with a third tap on Doge, that could look nice. Zooming in here, gonna highlight this as our third tap POI. Lining nicely with that tap one. Coming a bit too fast into there, as you can see. Might need to look for a new third tap POI if we put in a super narrow third tap where we then come up, and then we can look for that new third tap POI right there for EHP. That's definitely possible there. XRP never got the acceptance back up. Its last hope right here would be a PO3. Not a bad region for it because there's really just nothing right here. But it did sweep a fairly significant region, so you might want to get some relief from right here, but on that level too. But it looks like it's failing and breaking down. People are targeting that low. Okay. Gonna continue monitoring Doge here. I think we checked everything. Solana still pretty bearish on Solana here. Man, super local model there, but such a high quality POI and such a high quality buildup. Confirmed way down there. There's like a 10-minute confirmation on a couple of 5-hour, 7-hour model. If you're gonna play this, you have to be playing it with the long game in mind, which is not how you want to play this. Just because you can always complete this before coming up for that higher time frame range easily. Could be a PO3 similar to XRP that we could watch for there. So I'll throw the range on the chart for the meantime, but if we start moving any lower, not super interested in it. Okay, fine, getting that move up. Doge also getting the move up. Kind of view this whole thing as session manipulation, but at the end of the day, it's still making this fake supply. Easy to also say that once you see the reaction up through it, but super narrow. Not the greatest market structure opportunity either, with this not even being valid market structure due to the wick of that low, making that your valid structure high. Be watching that for an EHP model, but the way you're expanding up and the fact that this was, a manipulated move down, with, just judging off of that London session, pushing price down the entire session, we might not come back for it. We do have these potential models on XRP and Solana getting acceptance back up. That's nice. Very volatile price behavior right in there. Lots of liquidity coming down, so you could get a fast move down right there. Once you start sweeping all of that. Or you could just get a partial sweep. It's always possible as well. Yeah, XRP and Solana are struggling to get acceptance back into the ranges, so maybe we just want to watch for a sweep of that low. What happened here? Definitely want to watch that range for distributions. ETH. Having this potentially distributive range right here. Super fast price action. Zigzag right inside of here. New York and a New York right there. Decent range duration. So we got a lot developing. These are the times I hate monitoring so many charts because you can't really click through on all of them. You can't set alerts, so we just gotta try our best here. Yeah, kind of like you got a little bit of a POI below the range. Nothing too significant there. See if we get that move down on Doge here locally. Or if it just wants to expand to the upside. Coming down. Coming up, coming down. Just kind of front run it and go higher. But at the same time, it is good to note you left a lot of liquidity while approaching that technical target. So that move up could get reversed. Had a potential entry inside of here. Super narrow. You'd have to be entering, with the anticipation of this being manipulation. And for me, it was just how narrow it was that I didn't like, although it did have a good return to zone. Yeah, it was just very, very narrow. Zooming out, just looks better to have an EHP there, which we had all the room to do so upon this sweep, but price just did not want to sweep those lows prior to rotating to the range high, which is okay. Now we're seeing some acceptance back up, but we just got a lot of liquidity at that low. Similar with XRP, built a lot of liquidity, but got the acceptance back up. And we got Bitcoin sweeping its swing high. ETH as well. So now my focus is more shifting towards the distributions here. Like an after hours pump up right there. Interesting. Looks like it's expanding out of that range there. And that Doge, that was the clearest model we had. Nothing tradable there on Sol or XRP. Doge was just a very debatable entry. Technically, it was valid. Technically, you know, like you had the manipulation POI, which is a nice confluence. And you had this nice liquidity on the move down. The only thing that was tough about it was the fact that that was your structure high, which is just too high. You could make an exception, but this, due to this candle, is technically not structure. So if you're already making one exception with it being a super narrow tap, making another exception on your structure isn't that nice to do. But it, you know, it did have reasons to rotate up from there for sure. Nice POI and everything. We had also the right idea of looking for an accumulation there. Like, this was the main priority once we saw that move down. Just didn't end up seeing price develop how we would have liked. You can always check these other pairs, see that you get any accumulation confirmation to any of the pairs. I'm not going to bore with that. We can scan them real quick. What else do I have? H-bar, XLM, Litecoin. XLM had something. Okay, moving on. Further we come away from that low, you know, more real quick, let me check hype. Okay, sweeping that main high. Yeah, the further we come from the low, more the focus shifts towards distributions, of course. Mark out some of the new supply zones price we want to tap into. Yeah, really just looking at the overall price behavior. It is some nice overall accumulative price behavior. Just with the distance between these lows. That sweep and then boom and that sweep. Nice wick down when we came into here. You know, just kind of having these fast moves when you come into this price region. Just shows the overall demand in the price region. Overall liquidity build up. Just nice overall bottoming formation, apart from this last leg that literally could have just came down and swept these lows, and that could have created a very nice entry for us. Moving on. So we're getting liquidity sweeps on either end here. Still looking at distributions up here coming into the supply. Bitcoin's already in its supply. So we'll remove that and focus on this zone. Got these other pairs and ranges. Anything else? It's like XRP. Yeah, XRP could be nice coming up with some exhaustion locally into this POI. Doge has overall better bottoming formation here. Sold in somewhat of a range. You can look for a distribution sweeping that high. Although you did get a fairly aggressive move up, so preferably you want to see some more exhaustion. We're going to see. Range high sweep there. Simultaneously with ETH. Doge making its way up there. But yeah, we got Bitcoin looking the best. Actually, ETH looking the best with that exhaustion. What was the context here again? Refresh myself. Really starting to look like some ranging behavior here locally. I'm gonna remove this to clean up the chart. Technically, that's the only range you can pull. You can't pull high to low here because you're in a downtrend. You can pull like that though, but it looks a little awkward. We're gonna watch Bitcoin here on the lower time frame, see how this can progress. Move down. Some extreme liquidity creation there with a couple highs you can use. ETH. Also just watch like that wick high right there, because I want things a little bit closer to that tap. Back here. And we get a rotation down. XRP looking, slightly interesting here actually. I don't know if there's much from a third tap POI perspective. You have this as your demand, but that's a bit high. Maybe we want to look at just this zone overall. Doge just completely reversing this model. What do we tap into there? Kind of taps into this overall thing. Or maybe it was this. Ah, yeah. Did we tap that? Looks like we really just front ran the POI. Yeah, that looks like it wants to just reverse back. And this is starting to not look like a range anymore. More of just a structure continuation. Sol failed the model, left, failed to create a model, left liquidity below after deviating, got the rotation to the range high, and then is now getting a reversal. Same with Doge, which, goes to show why. It makes sense that this isn't getting the continuation because they had all opportunities to grab more liquidity to fill more positions if they intended to do a sustainable reversal. They had that clear opportunity right there for them, and they decided to leave the liquidity below. So are we coming into demand? It looks like we're just crushing this demand right here. So we're going to see if this ends up, kind of providing like a fake demand bounce, or if this actually can do anything there. Where XRP is actually coming into POI. Getting somewhat of a break of structure, potentially confirming the model. Looking like it, came into the most extreme demand. Came for the most extreme POI. Did sweep liquidity within the range. Making it hard to draw that textbook return to zone there. Something like that. I did like the overall context for a long here. Not liking this break of structure though. Leaving lots of liquidity, bad low. What is our time frame? 15-minute structure here. Getting that 15-minute break there. Lower time frame. Could kind of look at it as some sort of a bottom formation. That's very low liquidity price behavior. All those equal highs. Came into supply, got a bearish break structure. Bitcoin here as well, came into supply, got the bearish break. Redistributed in locally here. Did we come into this POI? This can be a nice POI for a short retracing into there. XRP, yeah, I'm really not interested. I'm not super interested in taking this. I'm seeing Bitcoin being in a semi-counter environment where you got that, even just a counter environment where you got the extended move away from this low locally. Broke structure, bearish, got the retest, and kind of now continuing to the downside. We're not really in a location of bounce, and XRP is just not the highest probability overall of model. So I'm gonna stay sidelined on this one. See if something better presents itself, or if it just completes. Like that wake up right there. Those looks like it just wants to reverse down. Solana, in its final demand, right above all that liquidity. Not looking super great, but it is in support. Kind of like that maybe distribution going into an accumulation if it does want to reverse from there, but that move down doesn't have a return to zone. Holy fuck. Who the hell triggered that? Let's see, is XRP complete here? I'd be very curious to see. So I like the context on XRP overall. Came up to that volume area high. That can definitely be a nice stopping point for a model that's not the highest of probability and confluence with the majors. Yeah, Bitcoin. Bitcoin here. Kind of like compressing in this higher time frame range. Removing all the bullshit in between. It is interesting to know that you have the distribution and the accumulations. Could be that Asia manipulation. Let's look here, extreme supply. If I'm not mistaken. There's a small zone inside of there. But this one got mitigated. Then this got mitigated. And this got mitigated on this push up. It's a nice supply zone to be tapping into. So yeah, I mean, high time frame, we could be in that compression first move, local first move, fake move environment, maybe where you get, you know, the move down that ends up, you know, rotating price back up, and you get that local first move, fake move. Not that it's sweeping any liquidity, but just tapping some supply that pops price down. Could be not the cleanest looking range. Volume profile is probably shit. Your max displacement is up here. So, you know, maybe you get some sort of a new range sweeping this high. That would be nice. Or an even higher time frame range where we come down and then you get something like this, where you draw that compression into it, into this point right here. That could be nice. Really just seeing this overall. That's the supply zone. You can see the imbalances and the somewhat of overlap, yeah, right there. Noting that it's lighter. Okay, and then see if any of these other pairs have nice developments for potential models. XIP, this would be the location we want to see price rotate back up to complete that model. The pairs aren't really doing much. Bruh. Bruh. Come on, man. 5:30 timing, of course. Man, I'm just getting fucked by these market makers. Not literally, but just in an unfortunate way. Did we also front run the liquidity sweep? What the hell? That's funny, man. Let's see what happens here. We front ran the liquidity technically. Oh. See, there could be some potential. What day is it? Friday. Could be like a CPI type of candle. This was some Asia manipulation, and then that was some news. So there's that on ETH. There's XRP getting stopped. So as you can see, the lower quality confirmation. Decided to stay sidelines, and it was the right decision there. Although you potentially could have de-risked either way. So yeah, preferably we see XRP now come. Yeah, it's getting a bit extended there. Preferably we see it just take the low. Some sort of supply created on that news. Like this could be what triggers the model to just play out. But I don't think I'm gonna enter anything inside of here, even if you get, a local structure confirmation. Especially with the context on Bitcoin. Yeah, and we can see that Doge reversed that entire pump, like we had anticipated on. Locally, this range right here, just zooming in on this individual price action, did have a nice compression. With that typical local first move, fake move for the real first move, fake move. So maybe we see an accumulation from here. Could be right on that news, push down. Could be. So we kind of got different stories here. If Bitcoin completes this, though, that turns neutral. What do we have on Solana? Not much on Solana to look at. And then ETH here. More difficult from a POI perspective due to the aggressiveness of the move. Because you can just look at this whole thing as some sort of a wick supply. Draw like that, that's fun. But yeah, I need to go to the bathroom real quick, and then we'll see what goes on here. Sorry about the delay. Very curious to see what this price action has in store for us. Yeah, that local exhaustion is pretty nice. ETH also building liquidity on either end, not necessarily in a clear range. But we are in a pretty clear supply zone. What was the other pair? Was Doge? Yeah. Aggressive retrace right there. If we can take out this news high, that's going to be your ideal scenario. Yep. So, interesting. I mean, technically this is just it could be part of your model. You front ran the POI here. So if you can get a local return to zone on this pullback, that could be nice. You still have 3. You didn't sweep your extreme liquidity, so these 3 liquidity lows intact. Interesting price action here. ETH is coming up sweeping that main high. Doge got that acceptance up and is maintaining the move for the time being. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I was saying, with these nice compressions, especially when they have that exhaustion beforehand, you could just get that pop down for the continuation, or at least the completion. So we're gonna see if we can get a third tap on this. Wow, yeah, now from the other side, we got Bitcoin looking distributive. Okay, move up. Bang, break a structure. So let's analyze real quick. Wicking above that block. It's not the most beautiful looking model. Bit of an exception overall. That pop-up confirmation right on New York is pretty nice. I feel like this could be worth a shot, although it is a bit weirder price action I'm not used to seeing. But you know, you can kind of use that news manipulation, Asian manipulation pushing you there, and then a bunch of news manipulation prior to. And you know, overall you do have a return to zone. There is some demand. Let's see. You got some inefficiencies in demand though within that return to zone to be careful of. This zone we can call fake demand. News release 5:30. New York open. Immediate push up. Could definitely call that fake demand right after that New York. Yeah, kind of looking at this as your extreme demand, probably 30-second structure supply. With this just ending up as a liquidity high that did not, you know, that zone anyway, it's got mitigated. You could kind of like pull that above the mitigation right there, and then ends up, you know, kind of looking like a pretty solid POI and invalidation there. It's just with this more aggressive local move up. What are we at? A day and 4 hours. I like the high formation. I like the invalidation. Overall model has some nice exhaustion. Just a super aggressive third tap with that liquidity sweep prior. And we're entering within that New York manipulation hour, so there's definitely some room for error within it. And I'm not too familiar with trading around these news candles and what it means to get that New York confirmation taking out the news high. I'm not too familiar with trading in those environments, but you know, it can be a good learning opportunity for sure. ETH is just simply expanding higher. So that's not a great sign from the distribution perspective, apart from the fact that we are sweeping our main range high. Because technically this is your range. Yeah, technically this is your range since you swept that low, so your structure is like this. Basically this. So I don't think that high took out that one. No. Yeah, so that's your structure right there. Breaker structure, range creation. Doge definitely looking a lot more bullish here. Solana expanding to the upside. Swept liquidity to the low. Creating a pretty nice pivot there. And has not currently tapped that, has it now? That was all the pairs. XRP basically confirming the model on that news. So yeah, it is a bit more of a risky entry that I can definitely see failing. But I think it can also provide a great learning opportunity within taking this trade, just seeing how price reacts here. It's a decent RR. I mean, we're trading Bitcoin, so the context of these other pairs doesn't matter a whole lot. Bitcoin does have the pro context for it, where, you know, you came up, you exhausted one, you know, and 2 times 2, and then broke structure, and then got your range creation. Break in volume. Yeah, I'm gonna pull out the checklist. But I'm interested in taking this honestly just for the experience. I'm not 100% sure how it's gonna play out, but I can see the scenario this working with the context and the overall, you know, local liquidity on that move up, the front running of this low right here, front running of the extreme liquidity and the range low there. That, you know, if it was intended to just, you know, reverse up from here, why not sweep that? So context, we're going to call it semi-pro with this extended move up. Kind of in that compression as well. Although you haven't got any pop out of a compression, but we've came into a nice supply zone, and there's not really any room for error within that POI. The range duration lead to the return to zone is only 3 primaries with a pretty aggressive move up that did sweep some liquidity. So return to zone is definitely lacking on this model. Tap displacement is super even. Third tap POI, there's not really any room for error there. Range and efficiency is a no. But the break in volume we do have with a honestly decently built out volume profile from when I was, you know, previously looking at it right here. Look kind of like 2 different ranges. This, you know, kind of still has that gap right there, but that gap also overlies with this demand zone, so maybe we'll see how price comes into here. This is one of those models that it needs to get the aggressive follow through. If we start exhausting down and breaking structure, I'll just either stop loss to break even or take a partial to de-risk, just go risk off. Because yeah, this is one of those ones with the aggressive moves where you just got the sell to buy. You're anticipating on a sell to buy to sell. So if you don't get that sell and you start consolidating in this region, that's a no-go. That can indicate that you're gonna curl back up and go higher. Third tap PY, blah, 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 supply demand creation. I think we do actually, have a little zone creation, seems like on this break. We have the potential of one. Of course, it's always just the potential of one because we need to see how the next couple candles close. We don't have that data yet. I'm liking the price displacement, the aggressiveness. There's not really a trap zone other than this New York manipulation zone that I'm viewing as manipulation. Breaker structure levels decent. Bars. I think we did have a nice little bars on like the 5. Yeah. Timing was right on that New York open push up. Inversed it. It still does look kind of awkward when you inverse this guy. Kind of like viewing it within the overall context. I can definitely see this getting that move up with the way you're building up liquidity below you and coming down, sweeping the lows into this extreme supply right here. But we're in that compression, so you could always get, like I was saying, a further sweep for that first move, fake move, if we are intending to go down. But this would be anticipating on the move down starting from here prior to the move up, with this being the real first move, fake move is what we're anticipating on. It's not too important. The room for error is definitely this aggressiveness right here and these demand zones and lock and return to zone. So yeah, I'm gonna go in the lower time frame and just see how price behaves here and see if we want to de-risk it or if we're just gonna shoot up and get stopped out. So yeah, that's not really what we want to see. So we have extreme supply here. Didn't really want to see this consolidation. Yeah, this ain't looking the best. I think I'm just gonna get stopped out here, yeah. Bang, that's L. Well, there you go. ETH expanding higher aggressively. XRP completing that. Doge looking like it just wants to get that move up there. Sol sweeping that range high after getting an aggressive sweep to the low. Not the perfect model for sure, not the typical model, typical price behavior within that third tap, but wanted to try it out. From the perspective of learning and seeing what happens, within that context, and also, with the potential that, it could be, that manipulated, volatility on that news where the New York session confirms it, which we see was not the case, unless this decides it wants to do a Model 1 right here and just dump aggressively, which is definitely a scenario. So I can monitor for that. If the Model 1 confirms and I entered on the Model 2, I have to also enter on that Model 1. So here we go. Let's just go to remove all this, throw that in the folder. So yeah, I mean technically this is your market structure low right here for the Model 1. Not super convinced by that with the demand below. Checking these sessions here. 2 hours into New York. Can't necessarily justify it as manipulation. Yeah, this isn't looking like it wants to go lower locally. Could kind of call that, you know, the Model 1 confirmation with the test. But it'd also be pretty good to just see this complete as a Model 1, although I took the L, like it just kind of shows the idea was correct, but like currently, we're not gonna, you know, my feelings, one, don't matter, the market don't give a fuck, but like, at the same time, like look how we're coming down right here. Not super nice. Gonna take this entire thing, put it in here to journal. Looking like, yeah, we're kind of leaving that price region, so it's fine. Popping out of this. Where do we want to call this? Compression. Yeah, kind of like seeing that as the compression. Where's that line? Pull that guy out. This right here could be its own model. Let's scan these at the pairs real quick. That range never looked good in the first place. ETH is actually coming up into a potential third tap for this macro model right here. Already sweeping that extreme liquidity. Although coming up with some zone creation here below. Great location to look for distribution on ETH. XRP completed that model. I was talking about that. Could be the third tap. Ended up being the third tap. It wasn't tradable because it was too volatile. Overall decent location to accumulate though. And you can see it played out, but this poor confirmation, low quality, not very aggressive of a move, didn't end up providing the actual pivot. All that liquidity got swept. Doge, like I said, when you sweep it after you get the accumulation as exhaustion, lots of exhaustion, then you get the compression range. Oftentimes you don't come back for a third tap. You just get the pop down, first move fake move, and then reversal back to the upside. Whether that is just a liquidity grab now, and we're gonna get a sell to buy to a consolidation or whatever, we will have to see. So like, yeah, I mean, finally Solana coming up above that POI there. You can kind of just see the overall bottoming formation, although you did sweep this high. It was, like I said, that was what I was talking about. Like, you had the scenario of this being a potential distribution into accumulation, but it just wasn't high quality to trade. One, due to the aggressiveness of this move, couldn't even enter on it, and two, it wasn't the greatest return to zone there. But you can overall, see the price action, and the call we made there ended up being correct. Just not something I would look to trade. Got some supply above us here. Yeah, that can be really nice to get some more of this exhaustion coming into that supply. So definitely watching Solana for a distribution here. Okay, got all those updated. What was Doge doing on the higher time frame in this range? Definitely. Don't even really want to call that a range yet. Just see if we sweep one of those points. Got that aggressive move down right on news. Can clearly call that manipulation. Yeah, you can kind of just see this overall range compressing. XOP, you could definitely get some relief up here following this, exhaustion to the downside, and then, rounding a bottom accumulation here could definitely get some follow through. Or, we could then see, this supply mitigation prior to a reversal back down to form a higher time frame accumulation there. That can provide a really good opportunity. Currently deviating that high, not seeing an aggressive break of structure just yet. Here we got ETH and Bitcoin in their respective ranges that could provide some nice bearish pivots. Fairly local ranges though. see if it wants to be a sweep to reverse or if we want to actually come back up. Yeah, it's looking like just a sweep to push down and complete that locally. Yeah. Same with ETH. Potentially look at this as a break structure into some demand here. Looks like this is actually your best looking POI. Deviating that high as well. Locally expanding, but on the higher time frame compressing on Doge. Solana, you know, also looks nice for a sweep up here. So most of these pairs, I want to see a push back up and just form a distribution at these highs. If not, then, you know, we just shorted the bearish pivot too soon. God damn. Yeah. And then you can see the aftermath. So, you know, we've just been kind of getting fucked by the market recently. Not really, but you get my point, right? Because we, on Doge, you know, those last two trades, we shorted two models prior to the pivot. Didn't get a valid confirmation in the pivot, though. Shorted these, and then we were just, you know, on all pairs, I was expecting a reversal from that exact point, but just, everything had two tap models. And then now again, you know, expecting reversals from these locations, especially now that we came up here and then just getting a two tap model on ETH and Bitcoin, whereas we did get a confirmation, but it was a pretty mediocre confirmation. You know, a lot of room for error involved in that third tap on the entry we did take, and then, you know, we get the push up and there's just no entry there. You can just really see the really nice exhausting price behavior though. And now that we're getting that move down, from this compression range, we can kind of call this like the first, you know, local first move fake move prior to the real first move fake move. Prior to the real first move fake move. I'm in the middle of something right now. I got duties at home, so I'm gonna end this one right now. We kind of, you know, covered everything though. Saw the follow through, saw that we had the correct order flow expectations, just didn't get the proper entry. Similar to how yesterday went. And yeah, I'll be back most likely tomorrow. Most definitely tomorrow. To continue backtesting this price region. Alright, thank you guys for watching.